Super Kicking It with Kelsi presents Two-Faced Wrestling Talk with Kelsi and Paul, brought to you by PWPNation.com, the reliable wrestling website for news and opinions. And now here's your host, Kelsi.
Hi, and welcome to Two-Faced Wrestling Talk. It's our first ever podcast episode, and we're so excited to be talking all things wrestling. I'm joined with Paul, my co-host.
Hi everyone, and good to be with Super Kicking It with Kelsi.
I'm glad to super kick it with you, Paul. And let's start off with just talking a little bit about each of our wrestling backgrounds. Now me, I started liking wrestling not that long ago, which is kind of odd because I've really absorbed a crazy amount of information in a short amount of time. And so I stumbled upon it kind of in a weird way with just watching a Netflix documentary about the top 100 superstars on Netflix. So this is right before the WWE Network was released. It was kind of like a perfect storm of great timing because I watched this documentary, the network was released, and I signed up right away, started to watch old stuff, wasn't watching the current WWE product, and then shortly after, WWE WrestleMania 30 was announced to be coming to our hometown of New Orleans. And so I was super excited. I decided to go, my first wrestling event, and after that, I just started watching the current product. I got hooked, and I really went far down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, I started getting into independent wrestling about 2 years ago. New Japan Pro Wrestling is my favorite promotion right now, and Ring of Honor is a close second, and WWE is far behind. So tell us
Does
about...
it at least get in the third place?
I don't know. Maybe. Kind of. Just in third.
Just barely. All right.
Yeah. So tell us about your wrestling background.
Well, obviously I go a lot farther back. I think, I don't know the exact year I got into wrestling. I do remember when Saturday Night's Main Event was a big deal in the 80s when that replaced Saturday Night Live. That was a huge deal. So I remember those shows. You know, all through college I went to WWE shows, at that point WWF. I went to NWA and WCW shows in Jacksonville. You know, throughout I've been to, I think I went to the second Royal Rumble ever. This year will be my fourth WrestleMania. I've been to other random pay-per-views and was in the Ring of Honor a little bit. But you certainly got me into New Japan a lot more, and I feel pretty strongly about it, but like I'm here and you're way here on New Japan. But I think we're going to have a lot of fun with this podcast because we watch so much wrestling and we enjoy talking about it. And now, instead of just talking about it at a bar or in a living room, we're going to talk with our viewers every week about what we think about wrestling.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be really fun to talk about wrestling with them. We want to get you guys involved, and we'll tell you how. You can follow us on Twitter at TwoFacedPod. That's TWOFACEDPOD. Make sure you follow us, please. We'd love to hear from you, and we're going to be asking for your questions every week. We'll have a question and answer segment later on in the show, but first, let's talk about why we decided to name our podcast Two-Faced.
Well, because you have a thing for cartoons and stuff like that, and so and obviously you're the cute one, I'm the serious one, and so a strong basically dichotomy of personality, kind of. You're, like you said, serious, I'm more fun and quirky, and I feel like that's going to be really cool, and you could definitely see that in our logo, the differences in our personality, but I think it's going to be great for back and forth for our podcast. It's always important to have two sides of the proverbial coin, and our logo is based off of basically Batman the Animated Series, the character of Two-Face, who flips a coin, as we know, and he's one half Harvey Dent. He looks like a normal guy, and the other half's all crazy and messed up with acid. That's one of my favorite cartoons, so that's where it essentially came from. And we want to thank Erik Hodson for the logo. We'll give you a lot more information about him later in the show. He did a tremendous job. He made me look a lot better than I actually am. You know, he made me look a lot more buff than I am. So thank you, Erik. You made me look good.
No comment. But first, we're going to talk about some shows that happened this weekend.
Yep, we had 2 great New Japan shows. We obviously had the Elimination Chamber this weekend, and we'll take you even through a little bit of what happened on Raw on Monday, which we'll do on occasion. We're not going to be a show review podcast, obviously. It's more going to be highlights of what caught our attention on shows. We're going to give you a lot of opinions. Look, you can read the results page of what happened on Raw. You don't need us to do that. We're just going to give you our opinions on what happened on Raw and New Japan and Ring of Honor, etc.
Yeah, I'm big on analysis and kind of academic discussion. So we're going to start with analyzing the WWE pay-per-view. What stuck out to you, Paul?
Well, obviously the first ever Elimination Chamber for the ladies was really well done. I was very impressed because, you know, they worked in this structure. Obviously they've familiarized themselves with it, but it was a whole new endeavor, and I thought everybody handled it really well. There was really only one obvious kind of miscue, and even that wasn't a big deal. Sonya Deville was supposed to punch and miss and get her arm caught in the chain link, and she missed and then like stuck her arm into the chain link.
Yeah.
That was a little awkward, but if that's the only beef you can have on a first ever women's elimination chamber, I thought it was tremendous. We both loved the chasing Alexa Bliss. That was
I would say that's my favorite part. I love that sequence where they're chasing her up the cage and over the cage, and then them working together made the heel turn of Sasha kicking Bayley off the top of the chamber so much sweeter, because they had just been working together. You knew something was going to go awry. You knew this was going to happen eventually, and then it did. She had an evil smile. That was my favorite part. Little touches like that, I think, are like the cherry on top of the cake, because it's just what you need to bring a cool moment to the next level. And I feel like the Elimination Chamber, since it's the first women's one, really needed something like that, a nice big moment. And I like that the big moment wasn't just about gimmicky stuff, because when you're doing a match like the Elimination Chamber, you know, it can get really ridiculous and gimmicky, and that's another reason why I liked them chasing Alexa up the cage and over the cage. It didn't feel like it was planned. It felt natural, like they must have timed it out perfectly. Just, it felt really natural to me.
Well, and I like you talked about the Sasha Bayley confrontation that we all knew that was coming. They carried it into Raw Monday night. I like that Bayley kind of turned the tables a little bit. Now she's kind of saying, all right, you're going to screw me over. Well, she backed away from the tag from Sasha, so obviously they're going to go at it at WrestleMania. I don't see how they're not setting that up, a Sasha Bayley match, which they've wrestled in the past, and it's been tremendous. So
it's been one of the best matches of the year.
Yeah, so I would really look forward to that.
Well,
speaking of the ladies, what did you think about Ronda Rousey's appearance and putting Triple H through a table, which I thought was a really good touch?
At first, you know, I was a little concerned because she was speaking in the ring, and obviously she needs a little bit more work on that. Mm-hmm. On Raw, she was a little bit better, but I still think that she needs a little more work, and it didn't make it any easier that the crowd was chanting in the background, and that's kind of like a pet peeve of mine.
Mine too.
Crowd, just let her say what she has to say. They're always trying to get involved, and I understand, I like to cheer and stuff, but I never do it when someone's talking usually, and I just wanted to hear what she had to say, especially because she was talking about, you know, Piper.
Right.
She was trying to pay respect, saying that she wanted to honor him, she wanted to respect his name and live up to his name that he entrusted with her.
It's one of my biggest pet peeves in wrestling too. Is the crowd is part of the show, but too often the fans want to be the show and they take away from the product. And Ronda was speaking from the heart. Plus, she's also, you know, she was emotional about being in the WWE, all of it, and the crowd just didn't really give her a chance. I mean, it seemed like they were on her almost immediately, and I didn't really understand that, and I don't know if people think she's sold out from MMA or whatever, but they carried it into Raw on Monday, and certainly looking like we're going to get a tag team of Kurt and Ronda versus Steph and Triple H, which I like on a couple of levels. One, I think we saw Kurt in the ring, and I know they wanted to build a Kurt Triple H thing, but I just don't know if Kurt can carry a singles match. I think this is good for him, and it's a good buffer for Ronda to get into her first WrestleMania and not have all eyes on her.
I agree with that wholeheartedly because Kurt Angle really scared me. You know, if you look at his knees, they're bent so incredibly. It's just kind of scary. When he was doing that match with the Shield, he just didn't look like the same old Kurt Angle. And he had a lot of independent matches right before he came into WWE, but I don't remember him looking like that. I don't remember him just moving in the ring and it looked painful to watch. So to me, I think this is the right decision if they're moving in that direction to where it's like a tag match. That's, you know, better than putting either Kurt Angle or Rousey in the spotlight to carry a match by themselves, which I don't think either of them can do at this point.
And finally, obviously, the news that you could have knocked me over with a feather. Roman Reigns wins the Elimination Chamber. We knew that was going to happen. I would have been shocked if that wasn't the final result. I get people are unhappy about it. I know you're not happy about it. You have been very anti-Roman Reigns. I'm not quite as anti-Roman Reigns, but I get it. Look, the guy sells shirts. The guy, people talk about him positively or negatively. He moves the meter for WWE. And so I don't blame them for putting him in this and trying to push him. But at the same time, it's one of those things where, you know, you want to do what's best for the company, but you don't want to alienate the fans. But I will also take the other side on that. The fans can't count, you know, like the Daniel Bryan thing has to be a rarity. It can't be the fans get to dictate how the shows go all the time, I think. So it wasn't a surprise. I'm not surprised by it. And you actually were somewhat impressed by him on Raw.
I was, and like listen closely because you may never, ever hear me say this ever again. I thought his little promo against Brock Lesnar, I mean, that was well done. Mm-hmm. And obviously they're trying to make him a sympathetic baby face, like, oh, I'm here all the time and Brock isn't. They're trying to paint it that way. At least it's a good story. At least it makes Roman look good. And I will say, when he's angry, he's better on the mic. When he's got a purpose, he's better on the mic. When he's not being silly, which he has been in the past, he's better on the mic. So I will give him props. And like I said, listen closely because you may never hear it again. Ever, because I am not a fan of Roman Reigns, and I don't know if I ever will be. I never have been, so.
All right, well, Roman Reigns is something you don't like. Something you really do like is New Japan. 2 big shows this weekend. What jumped out to you?
Well, yeah, there was 2 shows, and I think the biggest takeaway is the crumbling of the Bullet Club. Specifically, the biggest part of the 2 shows, the Young Bucks moving up to the heavyweight division and coming out and basically challenging the Golden Lovers, which is Kenny Omega and Ibushi. And that's really heartbreaking for me because I love the Elite together. I love their chemistry. Obviously, being the Elite is so great with the 3 of them. But I do think it's going to be a dream tag team match, and it sets that up for Strong Style Evolved, which will take place in March in Long Beach. You and I will be there, and it'll be great to see that unfold, but at the same time, as I said, I'm torn. But there's a couple of things that stood out in the matches to me. One being the crowd really loves Golden Lovers. You hardly ever hear a Japanese crowd that loud. What did you think about that?
Yeah, it was insanely loud. It was really, especially it was a small building, Kerrigan Hall. Yeah. And it was rocking.
It really was. It was crazy. You never hear them that loud. And another thing is, we were talking about little touches in a match, like Sasha smiling evilly. Well, there was some touches like that in the New Japan show. It started on night 1 with the main event. Skrull, all of a sudden, has his hair, it's gray. So he's obviously really stressed. I liked that little touch because it added a lot to the in-ring storytelling. And in the match, he was so hesitant to go against Kenny because Kenny's his friend. And he didn't know why, you know, Kenny's with Ibushi. Just really great storytelling. I feel like the whole Bullet Club story is the best storyline in wrestling right now. And it went even further. Skrull goes to snap his fingers and he like hesitates, he can't do it. I love that. But then night 2, Skrull's like totally changed his mind because Kenny wasn't holding back the night before. And he breaks, you know, he snaps his fingers. I loved that. I loved how it went from Skrull being undecisive to totally going all in, no pun intended, and kind of going against Kenny at the time. And another little touch that I enjoyed was the Young Bucks, when they came out to break up Cody and Kenny fighting on night 1 at the end of the match. Nick was wearing a Kenny Omega shirt, and Matt was wearing a Cody Rhodes shirt. And I really love that because it's still teasing. At the time, we didn't know whose side they're really on still. And even now, we really don't know their true alliance. But the last being the Elite, they kind of said, you know, Kenny, we've been in your corner for the last 4 years. Where's Ibushi been? But it's time we be a little bit selfish. It's time we think about the Young Bucks. So we'll just have to see where it goes from here. But I love the little touches, like the 2 different t-shirts when they came out to the ring.
Well, and I love Cody too, playing both sides, you know, trying to keep Hangman Page with him, and you know, he's trying to make his claim that Bullet Club is his. In fact, he used the line, "Bullet Club is fine, and Bullet Club is mine." So
I loved that. That was so well done.
Yes. So I think Cody, you know, you can dispute his wrestling ability, but his actual character has been great since he's come to Ring of Honor in New Japan.
Oh, I agree 100%. He has handled his independent run amazingly well. He's someone that it goes beyond just a character. Like, you really kind of don't like him. He plays a scumbag quite well. I'm not rooting for him at all in any of this, so he does that really well. So what else stood out to you?
Well, I know the first night there was the triple threat match that had Flip Gordon in it, and personally I've said for the last month and a half, 2 months, I love Flip Gordon's ability, but he just seemed like a guy, you know, because they haven't really developed a character of his. He hasn't been on the mic, so he just was a guy. And for him to beat Kushida and Takahashi in that triple threat match, I think is a huge step in Flip Gordon's career. I mean, you got to think so too. We've seen him in person a couple of times. We saw him at Wrestle Circus and Ring of Honor, and you've always loved him, but now do you feel like this is a big step for him?
I feel like it's a huge step because New Japan Pro Wrestling, that's a big stage. And going against 2 of New Japan's biggest junior heavyweight stars with Takahashi and Kushida, that's a huge deal because they've had great matches together all the last year and into this year. They had that great Fatal 4-Way at Wrestle Kingdom, which hardly ever happens in New Japan Pro Wrestling. They delivered, some people say it was the best match of the night. So going against those guys that New Japan considers their top stars in that division, I feel like Flip had a great showing. He got a big win the first night. The second night they evened it out, you know, with Takahashi taking the lead, tying it up. So I really liked that his showing was well.
And one other person stood out for you, a Ring of Honor guy that's kind of been almost a sidekick, but Beer City Bruiser had a good showing in Japan.
He definitely shined to me. I've always loved the Beer City Bruiser. He's so agile, and just something about him you like, with the cigar and everything and the beer. What kind of beer is he drinking? I don't know. I always wonder what kind of beer is the Beer City Brew. I don't know. I'd like to find out and have a sip of that stuff. But he had some great matches, and how surprising was it he was added into that match?
Right, he forced his way in basically into the triple threat title match. My only disappointment in that title match is because it was a Ring of Honor show, they had Ring of Honor guys, I would have liked to seen one of the Japanese stars be in that title match going against Dalton Castle, whoever it would have been. But yeah, Beer City Bruiser, I've seen him. I go to a music festival every summer, Summerfest, and they have wrestling there, and I saw him in person, and the first time I saw him leap off the top rope, I'm like, oh my god, that guy is huge and agile. So yeah, I'm happy like you are that he's getting a little bit of a push, and the crowd responded to him in a big way too.
They did. Like, he was even taken aback, and the announcers Kelly and Callis were saying, wow, Beer City Bruiser's not expecting to get a reaction here, and the crowd's cheering for him, so they were impressed, obviously, as was I, but I was already impressed before that. But I'm so glad he finally got a chance to shine. He's not just in Silas Young's shadow. He really was front and center, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see where they go with Beer City Bruiser going forward. But bring it back full circle now. You'll look forward to the Golden Lovers against the Young Bucks in a few weeks in Long Beach. They've already joked that really they should have gotten a bigger building, because now this is a huge event. This
is not even a joke. They flat out should have gotten a bigger building. They are losing out on so much money. Someone asked Meltzer, like, how much money do you think they're losing out on? He's like, $500,000. I mean, at least. I think so as well. They sold that show out in like 20 minutes or less. You and I tried to get tickets right away. We almost didn't get tickets. No. We were on the site 20 minutes before they went on sale. Mm-hmm. That shows you how in demand they were. And last time, I feel like New Japan underestimated the desire to go to the show, underestimated the enthusiasm that the American fans have for the product. It's actually a lot greater than they anticipated. And this time, at least they got a little bit bigger of a building, but still, they're still underestimating how much we love New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's really getting popular over here, and I hope it continues to do so.
Well, I mean, just in a year, you're seeing the elevation of New Japan. It's getting bigger and bigger. It's a subject we're going to discuss later in the show about how big it can get versus WWE. And let's go back to WWE and the Elimination Chamber and the historic women's Elimination Chamber. Mandy Rose was one of the participants, and you got a chance to talk to her a couple weeks ago in New Orleans at the WrestleMania Reading Challenge. Here's what she had to say about being in her first WrestleMania.
Hi, I'm with Mandy Rose, and we're going to talk about why is reading so important for kids.
Reading is very important for kids, all ages. When I was growing up, I never really liked reading that much. I mean, not many kids do. But when I established books that I really enjoyed, I started to love it even more because I was interested in it. And I noticed the more reading I did, whether it was a book every night or in school, the better I got, and the better, language and speaking developed a lot faster. So it's really important.
Definitely. And this year, you're going to be a part of WrestleMania, your first time being on the main roster for WrestleMania. What are you most looking forward to?
Honestly, just being a part of it, being out there. I've been to the WrestleManias, and to actually be in the ring, being a part of it, is a dream come true, and it's going to be amazing. And I just can't wait to kick some butt.
I can't wait to see you kick that butt. And also, what are you looking forward to about WrestleMania being here in New Orleans specifically?
Well, I'm really excited. This is like my second time in New Orleans, and I love it. It's great, and I'm really excited because last year it was in Orlando, where I live right now. So it was like kind of close to home. It was exciting, of course, but I feel like always more exciting traveling and going, here, which is going to be awesome. So I'm really excited for it.
Thanks, and I hope you get to check out some awesome restaurants while you're here.
Yes. Louisiana is known for seafood and
all kinds of stuff.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Just make sure you work out.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe after Mania, but definitely.
Thank so much for your time.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, that was a really fun interview. I was so lucky to be able to interview Mandy Rose, who actually was the first woman eliminated from the first ever women's elimination chamber match. How crazy was that?
Yeah, I'm sure she's made history, but that's not the kind of history she wanted to make. But that was kind of to be expected. I think she was going to be one of the first ones to go out, and you knew Alexa and Sasha were probably going to be there at the end.
Yeah, and I actually have a lot more interviews that you could check out on my wrestling YouTube channel, Super Kicking It with Kelsi. You can just search on YouTube, Super Kicking It with Kelsi, SuperKickingIt with KELSI. Also, I'm on Twitter at Super Kicking It with a G. And where are you?
I'm also on Twitter at PBoron88. I talk wrestling, I talk soccer. I'm kind of all over the map, but yeah, you've got some great interviews on YouTube. You talked to Big Cass, you talked to No Way Jose. A couple months ago, you talked to Punishment Martinez and Hangman Page. So great content on Super Kicking It with Kelsi.
Yeah, please check it out if you get the chance. And when we come back, we'll be talking about Eric Bischoff and his role in the Attitude Era.
Yeah, and the Elimination Chamber, coming off the Elimination Chamber weekend, it's apropos to talk about Eric Bischoff when we come back.
Our awesome Two-Faced logo was created by artist Erik Hodson. Check him out on Facebook at Erik Hodson Illustration. Hodson is spelled Hodson. He also has a Patreon where you can directly support his wrestling artwork, which is based off of comic book covers. His Patreon is patreon.com/HeyMelby, HeyMelby. Also, go to webtoons.com and subscribe to his new comic, The Dreaded Dinosaur Man. His art can also be purchased on Store Envy. Thanks, Eric. We love your logo.
What? Hey Jim, where does wrestling discussions live?
PWP Nation?
That's correct. PWP Nation is the #1 source for all things professional wrestling. They have great articles, podcasts, and overall great wrestling content. No dirt sheet rumors, just articles and facts.
You can follow PWP Nation on all social media platforms like Facebook at facebook.com/PWP Nation. You can also follow them on Twitter and Instagram, with both using the same handles, which is at PWP Nation.
Radical. And please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe to PWP Nation Network, where you will find all the great podcasts like Offended, Beer and Money, and many more. And please give us a Dave Meltzer rating. Give us that 5-star rating.
That's right. Go join the community today to get the best content for your professional wrestling needs.
PWP Nation, where wrestling discussion lives.
Welcome back to Two-Faced Wrestling Talk. She's Kelsi, I'm Paul, and we're coming off of Elimination Chamber weekend. Triple H created the Elimination Chamber, but in the storylines it was Eric Bischoff, and Eric Bischoff was in the news this weekend not because of the Elimination Chamber.
Yeah, he's actually in a Twitter feud with Dave Meltzer, which is a really weird thing when you say it out loud.
It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And so it started not even over wrestling. It seems to have started over some kind of confusion over UFC pay-per-view numbers, which Meltzer reported. Eric Bischoff was challenging these numbers, essentially calling Meltzer a liar, which is really, really weird.
There's got to be a deeper rooted issue there, don't you? There's some sort of personal history there?
Maybe, or maybe this is just all in good fun. I really don't know. But so after Bischoff calls Meltzer essentially a liar, Meltzer fires back because he never just lets it roll off his shoulder. He always addresses criticism on Twitter. And so he addressed it and said, well, you're a failed promoter because your promotion didn't make money in the long run and it failed.
Well, whether he was a failed promoter or not, he was one of the driving forces of the Attitude Era. There's no doubt about it. And it was a time in wrestling that, you know, I think a lot of people look back and rose-colored glasses as this was the greatest thing in wrestling. And obviously the ratings dictate that, but was it the greatest thing in wrestling at that time?
There were some really great points in the Attitude Era. Let's talk about like the NWO, stuff that's still being harkened back to today with the Bullet Club, which is obviously based off of NWO. And I do think there were some really important parts of the Attitude Era. You've got one of the biggest stars ever of all time to come out of that time in wrestling. That's Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I think this all comes out of the competition, which basically was started by Eric Bischoff. He got under Vince McMahon's skin. He kind of made Vince step up his game, and the WWE step up their game. WWF at the time, of course. And so not only did Stone Cold come out of that era, but The Rock as well. So you had two huge superstars, basically two one-of-a-kind, once-in-a-lifetime superstars. But it wasn't all good, because there were some things that I look back on and I just cringe. I mean, you lived through it. Any parts that you just remember being terrible?
Well, there were certainly some terrible parts, and looking back now, there was so much sex involved there, which, you know, now we know what isn't necessary to drive wrestling as popular. But, you know, people also forget, as good as Eric Bischoff was, he missed on Stone Cold, he missed on Jericho, he missed on Mick Foley, you know, so at least WWE was smart enough to use those guys in good ways, and that's part of the reason the tide shifted as well. But that era was pretty awesome. I mean, and you think of the big stars in WWE that came out of that. Stone Cold, Triple H really grew up in that era. The Rock. I mean, Undertaker was at his peak there. Mankind. I mean, the stars were great, but there was also a lot of garbage in there too that people, you know, because of the nostalgia, forget about. You know, there was a lot of terrible wrestling in there too.
There was, and since I didn't live through it, I can kind of like sift through what was really good and realize that it wasn't all good. But it was historic, as we've touched on, and I think right now we might be in the midst of a new Attitude Era.
Easy, I don't know. You think?
Yeah, I do think so. Because why? Because wrestling is more popular than it has been in like the last 20 years. It's on the rise. Now, it's definitely not at the same height as it was then, but I could see us getting back to that point very soon in the near future. And I think it all starts with, there's so many different wrestling promotions to watch, and there's so many different ways to watch them. We're talking about streaming. It's big, and it's like a new thing. Even Vince McMahon has gone to streaming, and I think it's great for the WWE, but it's great for these little promotions too, who didn't have that back in the Attitude Era to compete. And after WCW folded, there was really no big competition for a while. Now they've got a chance to compete, like Ring of Honor. But tell me your thoughts. I know you think Ring of Honor can do something to be even more competition for WWE.
I'll start with the pros. I think the competition is there because you've got big stars. You know, Kenny Omega is a big star. The Young Bucks are a big star. Now that Cody's there, I think Marty Scurll is becoming a big star. Will Ospreay is one of the most amazing wrestlers on the planet.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so in that regard, I think it could be that competition. But at the same time, New Japan is on Access TV in America. So if you're not streaming, this is just talking from a TV perspective. And Ring of Honor is in random places. It's, you know, in New Orleans, it's on a cable sports network. In some places, it's on just some local TV station. I think to legitimately be a threat to WWE, they've got to have a bigger footprint television-wise. Otherwise, I don't think it's going to be an even keel. They're certainly influencing the WWE.
Right.
But I don't think they're at that level yet.
I don't think they're at that level yet either, but I'm hoping they can get to that level for their own sake, because they are getting poached by WWE. WWE is benefiting off of their development of stars. They're basically poaching the Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Crazy.
It does. It really does, because people like are praising the WWE. Oh, like they've got such a stacked roster. They're, you know, they could have some of the best matches ever. They could, but they don't, because they don't let these stars that were taken from other promotions where they did have creative freedom and where they did have freedom in ring to be basically go all out there. They don't have that freedom anymore, and WWE doesn't utilize them to their fullest. So that's what makes me frustrated. WWE takes these stars, but then doesn't use them to their full potential. That drives me nuts.
Yes, I know. And you lost your mind when the War Machine left, when Ricochet left, when Adam Cole left, Kyle O'Reilly, Bobby Fish. But here's the thing, and this is probably part of my argument on why that the New Japan Ring of Honor is never going to quite get to that, and it's because of that, because it's still viewed WWE as the big boys, and while there's a crazy travel schedule, there's a little more stability there. I mean, we talk about all the time. I think the Young Bucks travel schedule is insanity. They'll go to Japan, they come back to see their families.
18 hours just at home, and then they went on like another road trip.
To like Australia or something, right? Yeah, so I can see why guys would want a little more stability and a constant paycheck. And so I still think at the end of the day, WWE is still going to be that higher standard. But I think
they could match with the TV deal, because everyone has the childhood dream of going to WWE. Mm-hmm. And that's, like you said, to them, that's the big boy. That's the place you want to be. So until that view is changed in everybody's mind, then no other competition will measure up. It will never change until there's a better deal.
But I do agree with you. We're as close to it as we've been in a long time. You know, WWE at least has a legitimate threat out there, because TNA never really was. I mean, yes, they had some great wrestlers, you know, Christopher Daniels, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, were all in TNA, but
now 2 out of 3 of them are in the WWE.
Yeah, exactly. So they certainly had something there, but you know, I'll be honest, I never went out of my way to watch TNA. I would watch it every now and then, and hopefully Don Callis now with Impact will make it a better threat. But no, they've never really had a threat, and I think how you know that New Japan Ring of Honor is a threat is things like the cease and desist thing, which may or may not be a storyline, right?
Right. I mean, if it's real, obviously they feel offended and threatened in some way. Mm-hmm. You know, they don't like the idea of them coming out to the Raw parking lot and causing a scene for being the elite. And also, you know, trying to go into the British market, the British wrestling market, and the Japanese wrestling market, I feel like that's how you also know that they think those promotions are a threat in some way. They're trying to go into the markets that are popular with the independent promotions and basically become popular there.
So it's going to be interesting to see whether we are really in a new attitude era. It'll be fun to see. And
only time will tell.
Look, the competition is there, and that's a great thing for us as wrestling fans.
Yep. It's the best time to be a fan, no matter how you view the era that we're in.
And you've opened my eyes to so many new promotions. It is fun. It's a great time to be a part of a fan of professional wrestling. Well, when we come back, we're going to take questions from the audience, and one of the questions is kind of along the lines of our discussion we just said about wrestlers coming to WWE. One of the questions is what WWE star would fit in New Japan. We'll talk about that and all your other questions when we come back to Two-Faced Wrestling Talk.
Tricky, come on. You know Mr. Brightside is the best killer song.
No, it's not, dude. No, it's... Oh, crap. Dude, we're live. We're live.
What?
We're live. Hey, it's Tricky and Stoutsy from the Offended Podcast, produced by PWP Nation.
We're basically the Seinfeld of podcasts.
And just because we are produced by a professional wrestling site doesn't mean we are a professional wrestling show. Recorded in the glorious Cockpit Studios, we are actually a show about anything, and sometimes just friends drinking and discussing life, pop culture, and sports, but with no filter.
Anything goes on Offended. You can find us on Apple Podcasts under the PWP Nation Network, along with other great PWP Nation produced shows.
And if you like our show, head on over to prowrestlingtees.com/offended-podcast to buy our shirt. Support us, eh?
You can follow Offended on Instagram at OffendedPod, and us on Twitter. You can follow Tricky at Trick1042, and myself, Stoutsy, at J_Stout09.
And thank you for listening. By the way, Jim, all these things I've done is the best killer song.
Erroneous! On all accounts.
Welcome back to Two-Faced Wrestling Talk, where each week we'll be taking your question and answers. Our first question this week comes from one of my favorite people, Joseph Chaplin, and he is so knowledgeable about New Japan Pro Wrestling. His question is, what is it about Tomohiro Ishii that makes him the best wrestler in the world and ever?
Well, from my opinion, I haven't seen enough of his matches to have an opinion, but I know the match in Long Beach with Kenny Omega, he really impressed me and made me want to see more of him.
Yeah, I mean, when he bit that rope to avoid going through that table, that was incredible, and the pop in the room was so loud. It was crazy. It was like electric. And that brings me to why I think he is one of the best in the world. You've got someone who doesn't look like the typical wrestling star. You know, he's shorter, he's stocky. They call him the Stone Pitbull. I really love that about him, and that really says a lot about how he's one of New Japan's top guys. They always go to him when they need a good match because he always delivers, and that says a lot about him because he doesn't look like a star, as I said, but he always has a great match. Against anybody on the roster, you could put him against Suzuki, you could put him against Okada, Kenny Omega, like you said. It's always going to be great. Doesn't matter.
Our second question is from Brendan Politis. What are your top 5 matches of all time?
This is a hard question, but I think I'd have to go with these, and I'm going to do just 2 honorable mentions or so. So I love Omega versus Okada, the first one from
Great
Wrestle
match.
Kingdom. Very great match. Obviously,
they were all good, I thought, but that one was...
one of the best of all time.
Yeah.
A lot of people think so, but a lot of people like their second match better. I like the first installation.
I'm with you on that.
Just because it was so unexpected. You didn't know how great it was really going to be. To me, it surprised me. I knew it was going to be good, but did I know I was going to witness one of the greatest matches of all time? No, I would have never guessed that.
What else?
Cesaro versus Sami Zayn, 2 out of 3 falls match at NXT. And I know this might sound really random and weird, but this is the match that got me into in-ring storytelling. I was really more about the pomp and circumstance, you could say, of the idea of wrestling. I never really paid too much attention into the in-ring stuff. I didn't really know anything about movesets, and so this made me start to pay attention. Wow, I can care about a match. A match can make me feel things, and that's why it really holds a special place in my heart. Another one that I love and I've watched multiple times, Brock Lesnar versus CM Punk, SummerSlam 2013. And I feel like that has almost everything you could want in a match. It's got great in-ring work, but an amazing story to go around it, where they're basically got Paul Heyman involved, and there's an awesome video package leading up to the match that they play right before. Incredible. WWE is great at video packages, and that's one of the best ones, in my opinion.
They're the best at that. The
They really
video
are.
packages are amazing.
Another one that seems kind of random, but it's got a lot of brutality, a really good finish, and it's just an unexpected type of matchup. Angle versus Shane McMahon, King of the Ring. I really, really love that match. Ospreay versus Ricochet, because that's what got me into New Japan Pro Wrestling. That match almost went viral. A lot of people don't think that's wrestling. They think it's too flippity. I think wrestling could be anything you want it to be. Wrestling is an art, and to me, it's all about being entertained. And I loved that match, and it definitely entertained me.
I loved that match to an extent. Too much choreography on some fronts that I don't like. Wrestling is still at its core supposed to be competition and guys battling, and when they're flipping back and forth in front of each other, and it's like Cirque du Soleil. I don't care for that, but those guys are two amazing wrestlers, and when they were actually wrestling, it was amazing. So,
I feel like the flippies they could be counters. They're so good that they're
like,
flipping over each other, countering each other, trying to counter. We'll agree to disagree on that one. It doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah,
but
no,
let me
it
just
doesn't.
quickly mention my matches that are honorable mentions.
Okay.
So, Generico and Paul London versus Young Bucks and the Cutler Brothers. It's a PWG match. Really, it just starts right away. I know it's super random. I've watched it a lot of times. I really like El Generico, obviously, Sami Zayn. And the Young Bucks, that was when they weren't even what we know now as the Young Bucks. They were kind of like the Generation Me style of Young Bucks. And they were just wearing plain pants. But the brutality in the match and the fast-paced, that's what hooked me. And also Angle versus Benoit, Royal Rumble 2003, that one's a great match. Really, just a lot of intensity. And when they faced against each other, it was always intense. I like that about their matchups. Suzuki versus AJ Styles, G1 2014, and that's because that's the match that got me into Suzuki, and he's my favorite wrestler right now, so.
well, I'm not going to add to that list. I think that's a good list. I'll just say a couple of the matches that I saw in person that really stuck out with me, because again, I've been watching wrestling so long, it's hard for me to pick a top 5, but some ones I've seen in person that were amazing. WrestleMania 17, the tables, ladders, and chairs, which I believe was only the second time that it had ever been done. The Young Bucks versus the Hardys at Supercard of Honor this past year, another tables, ladders, and chairs. And a match that is probably my favorite because I was in the minority in the Superdome. Brock Lesnar versus The Undertaker. I was rooting for Brock Lesnar because I wanted to see the streak end. And so to me, that may not be one of the top 5 classic matches, but as far as ones I saw in person, that was pretty cool to see.
Well, it was cool and it was historic. I mean, you could say you were in the building when Undertaker lost his first WrestleMania match. That's a huge deal, and they'll talk about that throughout wrestling history forever.
Well, and we can say we were in the building for both of Undertaker's losses in
We were.
WrestleMania. And will Undertaker be at this year's WrestleMania? That's a big
so.
question. We'll see. John
They
Cena.
teased that on Raw.
Yeah, certainly made it sound like he wanted to face him.
Yeah,
all right, what's our next question?
All right, so our next question comes from Nola Deej. If you could pick any former wrestler, dead or alive, to come back for one huge match, who would you choose?
Boy, that's a hard one. There's so many great choices. Who would I want to see?
My first instinct would be to say Mr. Perfect or Brian Pillman. But Brian Pillman before his injury to his ankle, because he never really got the chance to live up to his full in-ring potential. But someone who I think is easy to say, Macho Man.
Yeah,
Who wouldn't want to see Macho Man back in the ring?
That's who I was kind of thinking. Look, Stone Cold. Maybe Stone Cold might be my answer, just because he was so much fun to watch, and the neck injury cut his career short. I think Stone Cold's going to be my answer.
That's actually a great answer, because I didn't really think of that. I was thinking more of people who are passed away. But Stone
But he
Cold,
said dead or alive, right? Yeah.
he did, yeah. And Stone Cold really was someone I would have loved to have seen more of. He could have had a way longer career. Such a shame.
Our next question comes from Twitter at Deej Kirkby, Magnet and Steel, who want to know which WWE star do you think would adapt to the New Japan style the best? Obviously, they can't have worked there before.
I want to say Seth Rollins, because he's got a lot of physicality, and if you remember, he was out injured at the same time as Finn Balor, and they were doing their rehab together, and for some reason, Finn Balor did well in the New Japan Pro Wrestling system. I feel like Seth Rollins could measure up. He does CrossFit, he's really, really athletic. It's a hard system to be in, but I think Seth Rollins could live up to it.
From a physical standpoint, I'm going to go with Seth Rollins' brother from The Shield and Dean Ambrose. When he's on, he's really good, and I think he almost could, because he's crazy, he almost could be an American version of Suzuki, I think, because he's kind of nuts like Suzuki.
Yeah.
But I think Rollins is probably the easy choice there.
Yeah, he is kind of an easy choice, and I wouldn't really go with Dean Ambrose, but maybe if he harkened back to his CZW roots, where he was way more extreme, I could see it as kind of like something different in New Japan Pro Wrestling, but not what you're seeing these days in New Japan Pro Wrestling as like a more wrestling-based wrestler. So, but I understand your reasoning. I think that's a very unique choice.
But you also you're not a big fan of Dean Ambrose.
I used to be.
Right.
I used to be.
You think he takes some matches off, don't you?
I feel like he could be a little sloppy in ring. So he's not my favorite. I think this time away, I'm sad that he's injured, but I think he needs this time away to freshen up because he was getting a little stale. So I'd like to see what he does when he comes back. He definitely needs kind of like a rejuvenation to his character or something different. We'll have to just see what they do with him.
All right, a couple more, right?
Yep. Let's go to the next one, which is from Brotherly Love Wrestling at 215 Wrestling on Twitter. If rumors are true and it's Reigns-Lesnar at Mania, which we now know is true, if Reigns wins, do you think he'll just be a transitional champion or a longevity champ? Compliments of Brotherly Love Wrestling.
I think this goes back to our Roman Reigns discussion earlier. I think WWE likes him in a position of power, and especially if the rumors are true that Brock Lesnar is going to step away for a little while, I think I could see Roman holding the belt for a while and fighting off all comers. I could see him winning and then going against Finn Balor at a pay-per-view. I think he could go against Seth Rollins again. I think the options are there. So I would think Roman would be a long-term champion for at least a few months.
I'd have to sadly agree with you. I do think it's going to be Reigns who comes out on top at WrestleMania. I think he will be a longer reigning champion. I do think we need a steady champion. I just wish it wasn't him. I know it's horrible, but I do miss having a champion on every show, and Brock needs to drop the belt to somebody. I can't see him holding it much longer, especially like you said, Dana White teased something the other day. He tweeted out a picture of him and Brock right before the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. What does that mean? Mm-hmm. Could be trolling, could be serious, who knows?
We'll see. All right, couple more questions. This one from Caden at Psychoratic. Bullet Club, when will the stable come to an end? Well, Kels, sadly for you, it seems like the Bullet Club is already starting a fracture. Luckily for them, they have about 8 million people, so they can break into two factions. There could be Bullet Club 1 and Bullet Club 2, and you'd still have multiple people. Come on, it's ridiculous. They got so many people in there.
New Japan is made of factions.
Nope.
Everyone has a faction with a lot of people in New Japan.
Not that big.
It's somewhat big, but you cannot say it's NWO big.
It's getting there.
No. And I do think we're seeing the splitting off right now. When will it officially come to an end? I don't know. I don't think it ever will come to an end officially. I feel like even if they break apart completely, they'll get back together because it's too much of a moneymaker to dissolve completely. The merch.
Well,
but then again, the elite is really the golden thing of the Bullet Club. It's like that's what really makes the core money.
Well, do you think there will be a version of the Bullet Club that sustains, or will the name just go away and all these guys form their own factions, or will there be a portion of Bullet Club, no matter which portion it is, whether it's Cody, Marty, and Hangman, or whatever? Will there be a portion of Bullet Club, or do you think that just goes away?
No, I do think there'll be a sustainable portion of Bullet Club. Probably the Bullet Club, what they're calling the OGs, the originals, especially like Tama Tonga, the Tongans, they say. Bad Luck Fale. Technically, the Young Bucks are originals, but I don't think they'll stay with the originals. So, I think there will be always a Bullet Club, at least for quite a while. Just, it won't be what we know now as Bullet Club.
All right.
Thanks, Caden.
Yep, couple more.
All right, let's go back to Facebook with Mario Marchiata Jr. Should Ric Flair reform the Four Horsemen, and who should be chosen? Well, I kind of feel like that's already happened in a way with one of my favorite factions, Evolution. What do you think about Evolution? It is kind of like the Four Horsemen.
It was, and I don't think there should be a new version of the Four Horsemen. Obviously, Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch and Sasha and Bayley were the Four Horsewomen, which I thought was an interesting way to go. But the Four Horsemen are the Four Horsemen, and I don't think we need a new version of it.
I have to agree with you, and also it'll be interesting to see if anyone challenges the Four Horsewomen. There was all this talk about the Four Horsewomen of the MMA world, including Ronda Rousey. So we'll see if that happens in WWE, and a matchup between them and the MMA Four Horsewomen and the WWE Four Horsewomen, that'd be pretty cool to see. I think that'd be a great story.
Finally, this is from John Guardarama. At what age did you begin watching wrestling? Well, we talked about this a little bit at the beginning of the show. I'm early to mid 80s.
But how old were you?
Well, I guess I'm
Teenager?
gonna date myself. Yeah, I probably would have been around 13, 14, somewhere in that.
I was in my 20s. Like, I'm not a very long fan. Like I said in the beginning, I've only been a fan a short amount of time. I would say about 22 or 3, maybe even 24. So not long at all, but I have learned a lot, like
Yes.
I said before.
And you are insane how much you've learned in just a few amount of years. Well,
Yep.
we should mention, great questions, by the way, everyone.
Thank you.
Good questions, and every few weeks we may have some giveaways to a random question. We're just going to pick a name out of a hat, and this is what we're giving away, and who
We're
we giving
giving
it
away Nice Boys Don't Play Rock and Roll. This is a PWG DVD. It's a great DVD. Lucky Brendan, who asked about our top 5 favorite matches, and he's going to get this DVD. Congratulations, Brendan. Thanks for sending in your questions, and thanks to everyone else who sent in questions as well. We hope you send in more next week. Okay, now we're going to close the show and send them home. What's your one thought to send them home with?
I want to go back to Raw a week ago. Matt Yoder of Awful Announcing wrote a great article about the Gauntlet match and what it did for WWE. I thought it was a great, especially the week of a pay-per-view. That's always such a throwaway show. And to have that Gauntlet match was really mesmerizing. I'd like to see that be a pay-per-view going forward. The whole show just be a Gauntlet match. One men's match, one women's match. You're talking 2.5 hours. I think last Monday's Raw proves that wrestling fans are smart, and if you give them something good to watch, they'll watch.
I have to agree. I would love to see more long, drawn-out matches. That's kind of what got me hooked into New Japan Pro Wrestling. So not that I want them to mirror the style, but it'd be nice to change it up once in a while to actually watch some good matches that don't last 10 minutes, you know? And I love your idea about it lasting for a whole pay-per-view. Very intriguing. My final thought to send you guys home, because of the Olympics recently, at View from Top Rope on Twitter, who have a great wrestling podcast, answered the question on their Q&A about what would happen if wrestling was a part of the Olympics. And at first I said, how could wrestling be a part of the Olympics? Well, then I started thinking about it. Well, just like figure skating, it could be something that's presented and judged with a numerical value. Obviously, it won't be a competition as we know it, like with sports, like with something like hockey. But a country could have 2 people that they have to represent them, and the match would be based on and judged on basically in-ring storytelling, out-of-ring storytelling, meaning that it could have a promo leading up to the match, and obviously in-ring working, their athletic abilities, their timing, the difficulty of their moves, etc. I think that'll be so intriguing. Obviously, we'll never ever see that actually happen. It's just fun to speculate who would each country choose to represent them. For instance, like Canada, Omega, and Jericho, obviously we know that they can have a great match. They already did.
Ireland, you could have Finn Balor and Sheamus. I mean,
It's pretty limited there, but yeah.
well, there's your two. No, it's a good little discussion
It is,
subject.
and it's fun.
It's not something that'll ever obviously
No.
happen, but it is fun to think who would represent who, and I'm sure somebody could simulate some sort of game on a computer
yeah.
of who would win the gold medal and who would be the best wrestler in the world and win the gold medal. I think probably right now it would be Kenny Omega.
And his partner.
Yes.
Who'd be presenting the match.
That's right.
But I actually want to hear who you guys think would be representative of each country. Who would you choose to represent each country in the fake Wrestling Olympics? And you could do that by interacting with us on our Twitter page at TwoFacedPod, TWOFACEDPOD. And I also want you to go there and interact with us in other ways too. Follow us if you haven't already. We're also on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we want to hear from you. Also send in questions for next week. Well, that's it for our first show. For Paul, I'm Kelsi from Super Kicking It with Kelsi. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.